Hi, guys. Welcome to Chakra Sessions. I'm your host, Polly Jo Labbé, here with Star Nations Radio Network. And big shout out to Rob Coulter, who's helping me out today with my producing so that I don't have to fly solo. It's always interesting when you return to something that you haven't done in a while. You got to practice a little bit. And that's what we're doing tonight. So tonight's show, Chakra Sessions, is all about the energetics of the inner child. And it's so interesting that just saying I was going to do a show about the inner child sparked some messages to people to me about what I should talk about and things like that, and which is so super sweet. And my team I channel when I'm teaching, so it's an interesting thing. I assume I'm going to cover what everyone is looking for. So let's see who's in the house tonight. Let's see. I see Ellen is around. Hi, Ellen. Nice to see you. And Dinah, good evening. Glad to have you around. Judy. Oh, thank you. Missed you too. And Taylor. All right. Hi, Taylor. Nice to have you. And Carol, hello. Glad to have you guys around. Thanks for dropping in. One of the things that, Deborah's here too. I want to say a quick shout. And Jen. Hi, Jen. How are you? Nice to have you. And Deborah, hi. Nice to have so many nice faces already here. So nice and early. There are a lot of people who do energy healing or therapy work who work specifically with the inner child. That's not something new. Most of you have heard about that work. From a multidimensional approach, as with my school, Trinity Mystical Energy, we look at the multidimensional energy, and we really integrate the quantum mechanics of that. And that may sound nice and complicated, but really it's about following the vibrations and the frequencies and seeing how the waves and the particles move, because we're all energy. And energy really is just, emotions, which are energy in motion. And our inner child has its own energy system. And that's not something that a lot of people talk about. People talk about our experiences as a child, and how those impact us, which they do, especially our lower survival chakras. But what we are seeing quite a bit lately is that some people are really living through their inner child. Their inner child is running the show. Thanks for sharing that, Rob. That's my school, in case you guys want to take a peek at it. And we do hybrid learning online and in person, which I'm really excited about this year. We just relaunched the school. So that child part of us, we all were a child at one point. And we know the environment we grew up in, that we were nurtured in, influenced who we are now. And maybe we even understand that there are things that happen when we were little that we may not even be aware of, that are influencing our choices, our decisions, and our reactions today. So the energetics of the inner child are pretty important, because that child controls a few of our major survival archetypes. The inner child determines whether we go into victimhood or we choose to be victorious. And if our child is feeling wounded or was wounded and had no time to process their emotions about that, or to do any clearing work on it, they may still be feeling like a victim. And when that happens, we start to call in this interesting energy of more things. We start to attract more things that enhance or support us being a victim. I know that sounds strange, but we've all been around people who it seems like they just are a magnet for rough things happening to them. And then we've also been around people who just seem to be a magnet for magical things happening. And there's a difference in the energetics of the inner child. And that will influence us. So I see a number of other people have joined us. I just want to take a quick break to say hello to, I see Rochelle is in the house. Hi, Rochelle. Glad to see you. Martina. Oh my goodness, very long time. And Linda, full wolf moon. Yes, hello. And Christine. Hi, dear. Nice to see you. And then Kathy. Hello, Kathy. Oh, and Bree. Yay. Nice to have you guys in the house. So with this inner child, right? They're controlling whether we're choosing to be a victim or not. And they're also controlling whether we're going to sabotage ourselves from success. And they also are in charge of whether we sell ourselves short, or whether we feel like we're not good enough. But the cool thing is, because the inner child has their own set of energetics, we really can disconnect our energy slightly from that inner child. So we can be a separate entity, really, from our inner child. And the same is true with our inner critic. And we all have one of those too. And the inner critic often speaks with fear and judgment. And if the child is worried about their survival, that's what they're going to speak with too. Because both of those aspects of ourself, our critic and our child, they're here to help us keep our survival body safe. But they may not understand that they're also here to help our soul and our spirit evolve into the next version of ourselves, over and over again. So how do we, combat that, or how do we address that? So part of it is learning to look at the wounds that our child and our critic are holding. So with the critic, let's talk about the critic for a moment. Often they're very judgy. And so they tend to speak up and tell us what we're doing wrong, and tend to put us down. And they might carry the voice of some people who, maybe meant well, maybe we're trying to help you, but in their helping, you were left feeling less than and not good enough. And that can be everything from, it's when we look at other people and we compare and contrast. And when we're doing that, there's somebody who's more and somebody who's less. And that's simply not true, but it's a role model. It's a model that we were nurtured in. And so our energy was nurtured to have that type of logical thinking, which is actually illogical thinking. And when we look at the child came in a magical being, just like we are, a magical divine being. And the very first thing that happened to the inner child was it became separated from the divine. And that is plenty of wound enough, feeling disconnected, and being left out, and excluded. And so there's often this energy with the child of trying to find their community, trying to fit in somewhere, because the energy is meant to be oneness, not aloneness. And part of our soul's journey is to find our way back to that oneness, back to community, while still holding our unique flavor. And with the energetics of the inner child, because they are so wrapped up in survival, their chakras, and yes, they have their own chakras, are all very easily manipulated by fear. And we've seen how well fear works to manipulate people into doing things. The scarcity that creates the hoarding and things like that. And that fear also, we can get into the what ifs and the could be's and maybes, which are not in the present moment. And in that separation from the divine, the child, kind of goes into a little bit of panic. Unless that child is fostered and nurtured. And some people were brought up with this, parents who allowed magical play and invited the intuition to stay open and the psychic abilities and gifts to flourish. But the majority of people experienced situations and circumstances that had the child ask the body to close things down, to keep it safe, because the child, without the logic, just wanted to stay safe. So one of the things that we can do about our inner child is really learn to reconnect with them. It's a very strong primary relationship that we have. Our energy is very codependent with the child and the critic. So imagine if you could elevate the vibration of your child and your critic so that they both feel more at ease and they feel more in harmony with you and reconnected with the divine. And for those of you who are here, we've all had that experience where we've done meditation and gotten real quiet and felt really peaceful, and it's calming and it's soothing. And that's the environment that the inner child can flourish in. And one of the things that happens for the inner child is the wounds that it carries our trauma for us. Which is a huge grown-up responsibility that we wouldn't ask any child to do for us. So one of the things we can do energetically is to begin to take back our own trauma and let the child come out and be seen, be heard, and be played with. So those are all really huge things for us to think about. How can we do that? And that is the basis for elevating our energy, is to love unconditionally the child within us, to love unconditionally the critic who's trying to be helpful, but maybe is a little noisy, and really giving them some space to inhabit the same space as you, but maybe not have the final say. So let me see who else is in the house. Deanna, nice to have you. Hello. Deborah said, this is the best explanation for inner child and adult functioning and decisions. Thank you. Bree says she loves that. And Rob says that explains why we work jobs. Yes. And Cindy Lynn, hey, nice to have you. Yeah, that is, one of the things that can really change the quality. Oh, I've missed you too. Yeah, my inner child really needed some caretaking. That's part of why we're here. I had a lot of trauma in my early childhood, and I moved quite a bit. And for those of you who understand the root chakra, that one of the foundations for it to being steady and not wobbly is to live in one place, to have some schedule and consistency. And that just didn't happen for me. And part of it was, my mom was in school and becoming a professor, and my dad was, moving from a teacher to administration in schools, and they were very focused on part of their life purpose, and so we moved to where we needed to be. And many of you know, my parents also got divorced when I was younger. And that's unsettling because it doesn't give you one home. It might give you two. And both of my parents moved to different apartments. So there were times I was in multiple places at one time. And so when I moved I'd lived in Massachusetts since I was 5. So for 50 years, I lived in Massachusetts, and then we just moved to Maine back in May. And with that move and moving into a place we were renting first so that we could see whether it was the right size. My husband and I were downsizing, and to go from 4,000 square feet to 1,000 square feet, we just needed to see if that was the right space for us. And so we figured we would rent first because it's way easier to move when you're renting than when you're buying. And so that's what we did. And so it unsettled a lot of things in my root chakra, along with this wonderful virus that has created some interesting situations for a lot of our root chakras. And I moved away from my community and my family, my children. So there was a lot of stirring of the pot. And through that, I got to see what my inner child was still holding on to. I'd worked on a number of things, but I'd forgotten really about the instability that comes from moving, and the instability of jobs taking on a different persona. And I mean, I stayed quite busy doing healing work because I can do it online and long distance. But my husband does massage. And so that just sort of stopped for a little while. Actually, for a long while. And so it changed dynamics. So everything was changing. And so at that point, it was really important for me to really dive in and see what my child needed to be taken care of. And part of that was just letting her be seen and be heard, and having plenty of playtime, honoring nap time. Nap time seemed to be a big thing at various points in time, lots of times at the ocean. And also when my critic would creep in, and honoring the critic and letting that be heard and not taking it personally, but allowing myself to be in a space where I could see, that's still coming up. And so there's a little more work to do there. And so I spent some time working with the energetics of that. And we all can become the parent that our inner child dreamed of having. So imagine, you're this magical being who's limitless and powerful and magical, and you're brought into a place where people have forgotten that. And when we can look at our inner child and remember that that's really who's inside, and they can help us find our own magic and find our own way, it's so important. And it's amazing to me. We're here on the full moon. And in the full moon, for me, this is my most magical time. I don't know. I know for some people it's the new moon, but for me, it is totally the full moon. The full moon's like my sunshine. I bathe in it. It's, I just revel in all of that energy. For some people, all that energy can be a little creative creative. That's interesting slip. A little chaotic, because it spurs a lot of emotion, and we're in a moon where it's like time to take back our power, time to take back our courage. And at the peak of the moon, we release everything that's blocking that. And so tonight, the fact that the inner child wanted to speak and be here and have its energy help you rather than fight against you, we can use the energy of the full moon to release what's ever blocking our full communication and cooperation with our inner child. Because the child gets scared, just like children will. And what calms the child is often a loving, nurturing, calm adult. And so learning to be that for our inner child, even when we're in the unknown and we don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to unfold, when we lean into the fear, then that's what we create, more fear, because it amplifies with our child's fear. But if we understand that the best way for us to stay centered and connected and to allow spirit to come in, because when we are inspired and have new wonderful ideas, it's because spirit has dropped in and reconnected with our soul, our heart, and the child within. That's the inspiration that comes in. And when the child feels that magical connection, it explodes in all this like creativity. So what a huge thing that we can use. So I want to check back in because I saw my little feed going up there a little bit. So Lisa Crawford, hello. Nice to have you. Waving back. No worries, Jennifer. It's recorded. You can always go back. Jenny, hi. Been a long time. Yes. Very nice explanation of the inner child. No longer on Facebook. So glad to catch you on YouTube. Yes. I'm very happy that it's going through both platforms. I had a very interesting discussion with my son, my youngest son, who's about to turn 30. And I asked him, if you were looking for what I do, what platform would you be on? Because I know that each platform has an age basis, and but the younger crowd knows where to look. And he said, YouTube was probably one of the best places to be. And Facebook was good for my generation, for those who are still on it, but a lot of people left for a good reason. So I'm playing around with that. So let me know what you guys think. So Cindy Lynn saying, oh yeah, lots of stirring for all of us. And my inner child is definitely comes out more good and bad. Yeah, happens. Yay, Carol. No, I'm not doing cards tonight. That's coming up soon. I'll talk about that probably at the end. We'll see. And Bree is saying the full moon is here. She's a moon child. Yep, I'm totally that. And Cindy like creatively chaotic. Yeah, maybe that's what I was really trying to say. And Christine, love the full moon. I know, it's just my babe. And everything you're saying is really spot on and hitting home. I missed and needed this. You are so welcome. So what's so sweet is that it is not that hard. The energy of the inner child is very, very basic. It's about wonder, excitement, joy, and curiosity. So when we can find time to make those things a priority, even when we're in something that maybe you would normally say is negative, how about getting curious about it? Like, wonder why this is showing up today. What is it here to teach me? That's a different approach than going down the negativity rabbit hole, right? And So then the inner child isn't freaking out because it's bad, right? Because when the inner child thinks it's being bad or the situation is bad, it has a whole set of things to do. And usually it's shutting down the chakras. Boom, 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 boom. And then the less energy we're using to move through situations, the more we kind of panic. We go into survival mode because once our body has, less chakras open, it starts to go into survival mode. And just as a side note, cancer cannot take root with more chakras open than closed. So if nothing else, if you'd like to keep cancer off of your list, really important to think about, how do I keep my chakras open? And the inner child is in control out of 3 of them out of 7. So imagine if you're not working with your inner child and you're not connecting, you could run into some difficulty. So with that said, one of the things that's meant to happen with the inner child is that as our chakras progress, the inner child is meant to live inside of our heart. So just imagine it's just surrounded in a cocoon of love and happiness, joy, right? But many of us know our heart is also full of, disappointment and grief and unexpressed sadness. We may be holding on to blame or shame. And when we hold those in our heart, we basically push our poor little child down into the muck, into the survival body. And when that child is hanging out in our survival body, just imagine you're in the solar plexus. It's really bright and sunny, but there's all sorts of anger around. And the inner critic's hanging out there. So you've got this other being who's there saying everything that you do wrong, and maybe you're not good enough. And so then where do you go? You slide down even farther. And then you go into that water energy and you get all sorts of emotional. And we've had, I'm sure many of us in the room can say, we went through emotional roller coasters, we got overwhelmed. We cried for no reason. We had a short temper, especially in the last year, because the children have been freaking out just a smidge. And they have every good reason to, right? I mean, the world's changing around us and we don't know what's coming. So if you're not trusting that we're in divine timing and that this is exactly what we need to evolve and change as a huge consciousness lift, you're going to freak out. And then the child drops again, and it drops down into that root chakra. And that's where we're worried about our home, our job, our money, our safety, and all of those things maybe came up. Even if it was just a perception of, I could have trouble, I could run out of toilet paper. And apparently, the sky was going to fall in when that happened. But it was something that so many people fixated on, right? And I'm noticing there's things that are not on the shelves again. Different things aren't on the shelves. Some detergents and things like that. So there's still this stirring of insecurity. We don't know what the future is going to bring. We never did. But for some reason, it's supremely amped up right now. So because it's really amped up, it's because all of the children are having a tantrum. And there may even be some of us who felt like having a tantrum at some point in, the past year. Could be. And it's okay. It's completely okay. And we would never give a child a hard time. If a child was having a meltdown because they were having a hard time handling what was going on, we'd stop everything and we would take care of them. And that's the instinct. You've got this little tiny being who's crying. You stop and you bend down and you take care of them and you pick them up and you carry them until they're soothed and they're comforted and are ready to go on their way again. But most of us didn't necessarily notice that that little being inside of us needed us to say, I love you. And it's okay that you're having a hard time. And what can I do to help you? And did we distract that little being with play? Or did we hide in our phone or our computer or the TV or the refrigerator? And none of that's bad. It's a matter of we went into our own coping mechanisms. And the child, that inner sweetheart, when they're freaked out, they're the one controlling those coping mechanisms. So you can be an observer and you can get curious because that gets the inner child's attention. I'm noticing in this situation, the first thing I do is I go to the refrigerator, or I ignore what I'm feeling and I pick up my phone and I start scrolling or I start playing a game. Because we all have avoidance techniques, right? And some people, they're even healthy coping mechanisms, maybe that can still go off the deep end. Some people get on a treadmill or a bicycle and they ride and they ride and they ride and they ride. But being aware of, are you doing it to relieve the stress? Are you doing it to avoid what you're experiencing? Because the inner child is holding all this old energy. Suitcases full of our old thoughts and beliefs and experiences. And I know there are a lot of people out there who were cleaning a lot. Cleaning their closets, cleaning their rooms, reorganizing, because that helps move energy. But how many of us went into our inner closets and started cleaning and shining the flashlight into the corners where those dust bunnies might be hanging out? And remember, as children, when the lights were out, those dust bunnies could be a little scary. So just because you packed that trauma in this cute little box and put it up on the shelf doesn't mean it doesn't become the boogie monster for your inner child in the dark. And the dark happens when we're feeling scared or nervous or sad, or we're angry, we're having big energy. It can feel dark for the inner child because maybe we're going into our shadow a little bit, and that's all right as well. We have light and we have shadow because we're meant to walk between the both. We're not meant to get rid of either. We're meant to honor that because we are all that, and the divine is all that resides inside of us. But when we make it bad or we make it good, think about how you felt as a child being called bad or good. Now, yes, good might have felt a little uplifting, but it only was uplifting when it wasn't bad. But that anticipation, that waiting for the judgment, how did that feel? And that's when we want to go into the energetics of that inner child and recalibrate and reconnect that child with the magical being that it is. Because then what's living inside of us and flourishing in our heart is divine inspiration. It's the magical creative part of ourselves, and it becomes our focus. And that inner child loves everyone unconditionally. Everyone. It doesn't occur to the inner child to be the judge. That's the critic's job. And we're still going to wrap the critic in love, because the critic is teaching us both sides of a coin, right? But in this energy right now, in this new beginning that we're having in this age of Aquarius that everyone's talking about, or the ascension into the vibration of the heart, or the fourth dimension or fifth dimension, depending on who you're talking to, just imagine you're expanding your energy. And so we want our whole self along for the ride. And that starts with reconnecting and recommunicating and parenting that inner child, filling them with unconditional love and allowing them to remember the magical being that they are. Love this. Cindy Lynn says, oh, Jenny says, put some smiley faces up. So hi, Jenny. Cindy Lynn is like, yep. And my kids handle it way better than most adults. Yeah, because they get it, right? Lisa's saying, you make me and my inner child excited. Hey. And I loved Rob saying that, he needed to wipe himself constantly. Well, that could have been a coping mechanism, right? That can definitely be a coping mechanism. And the one of the things, oh, hi, Rachel. Hi, nice to have you in the house. Oh, so love that. So does my inner child. Right. Like the inner children really want to be seen. And I think you can see behind me my stuffed, this way. I have my little stuffed animal shrine, my original Winnie the Pooh, and I have a little shelf this way. I think you could see the tutu. I found that when I moved into my office, I needed to, when we bought our new house and I moved into this office, I needed my child to feel like it was her playroom and also be where I work, so that I would play my way through my tasks rather than feel like it was a chore. So when work feels like responsibility or tasks feel like responsibility, that energy sits on our neck and our shoulders. I know a lot of people who've been having serious migraines because they're carrying a lot of burden and responsibility energy. And when we can play our way through our tasks, it comes from our heart and it explodes out of us. So we actually sit up taller and we can breathe easier. And we all want to keep our lungs and our aura and our immune system working really well. And when the child is feeling stressed, she collapses, or the inner child collapses. And when the inner child collapses their energy, all of our energy collapses in. And it's why, emotions and beliefs that might be farther out in our energy field, as we collapse with the fear, all of those thoughts get much closer to our thinking in our head. So when you got maybe spinning in what ifs, and had trouble sleeping. It's because a lot of that mental thought realm got much closer to your physical body than it's been in a long time. So I found that having one of the first things I did was found a space for my inner child. So she has her own altar, she has her own toys, and she has her own time, and she has her own wand. I made her a magic wand. And she's allowed to have creative fun, creative play when she needs it. And there's times when, you're in the work and all of a sudden you realize like your neck, your shoulders, your back are hurting because you're all bent over, right? That's the perfect time to get up, put some music on, dance around, move that energy, go get a drink of water, go do something. Children did so much better with school when they had time to play, when they had recess, when they had gym many times a week so they could move their energy, when art and music were encouraged all the time. And they were allowed to get curious about reading and math and explore it like it was, this undiscovered country. But when we got really rigid about learning had to be one way, we diminished our teachers. So our teachers didn't get to be creative, and they fell out of their inner child and their joy of working with children. We created restrictions when we needed to make even more room for inspiration. And the inner child needs that room to breathe, right? Inspire. Breathe it in. But if we're collapsed into a small container, there's no room for that child to break free and be themselves. And what we're seeing right now is so much resistance to being squished. Those inner children need to be seen and they need to be heard. So start with yours. And that's how we're going to go. So let's see. Oh, love Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. Yes. Thanks to Rachel Jasmine, who's on here. She sent me the link to Build-A-Bear. Build-A-Bear has Pooh, Tigger, Eeyore, and Piglet right now that you can get. And they send them to you, so you don't have to go into a store or anything. And they have all the sounds and they talk to you. And right now they're occupying my sofa because they need to be in the living room where everybody else is. So that's one of those big things. And I love how, yep, Liz is saying, me every damn day. Yeah. Glad to see you, Miss Liz. Yeah, water. I am not the best at water. I've been drinking a lot more tea. Celery juice, for some reason, I've gotten really good with. And lemon water with a little bit of maple syrup in it. So it tastes a little like my inner child feels like it's lemonade, but my adult understands that it's cleansing my body for toxins. So it's a win-win on that one. Rob is saying too, there's only one way is to rock. Yes, because his inner child's a definite rocker. And Mike is saying he misses that feeling of wonderment. Yeah, right. And that's another thing that impacts us, that missing, like that we're missing things from our lives. And it's really hard. Yes, lemon or lime water, and told you celery. Yes. Actually any food that has a lot of water content can be helpful in the hydration. So celery and watermelon and grapes and regular melon. The things that don't have a ton of flavor really help with that. And anything citrus that you want to get some, that all works on the second chakra. So lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, they all work on bringing the fluidity back to our second chakra. And that's where our creativity rocks and rolls. So putting some flow back in there, that's another thing. And I find it really interesting that how much we need vitamin C and zinc and vitamin D right now, and elderberry. So, because those all help our aura stay strong, but it helps our aura stay strong because then the insides, our chakras, are able to support and boost our aura, the auric layers, to keep us healthy and safe. Dinah said she's been having migraines off the charts. I was doing so well, but not lately. Yes. One of the things that you can always message me privately about that, because I have a couple ideas on different headaches. There are ascension headaches that are happening that really mimic a migraine. And it's because you're feeling the pressure. You know how we sometimes get headaches because we feel the pressure system coming in? We know when it's going to be a big rainstorm or a big snowstorm. We're having the same type of pressure headaches as we're pulsing through expansion as the earth is going through its expansion process. So there's these pulse waves that we may be experiencing, especially as an empath. So I have a couple things that work for that. And it depends on where you're getting your headaches, which ones work. So don't be afraid to message me, anybody who definitely needs some help with that. Because depending on where you're receiving the pulse is what will help you with the headache. So yeah, don't be afraid to message me about that. So what I'd like to do, yeah, I pretty much, headaches have been off the charts. I'll tell you that for sure. And I've worked with a lot of them, because, I've been working with ascension symptoms for, really for over a year and a half now, helping people with them. And we all will experience them. They're consciousness growing pains. And I literally have an oil for that. If that's specifically the headache you're having, whether it's a headache or whether you're having joint pain, or you're having difficulty sleeping, there are a number of things that are ascension symptoms. And if it's ascension related, my team created an oil specifically for that. But then depending on whether you're just, it depends where you're getting your, where your headaches. Yeah. Yes. And also, Liz is saying, and it's like my shoulders are glued to my ears. Yes. That generally is, there's a headache in particular that starts up under the base of the skull and it goes down through the shoulders. And, a lot of the people who carry our warrior archetype, it's like they've been on defensive energy. The muscles have been so locked and ready for a fight that they're solidifying. And so it sends, it condenses in that location, almost like creating a shield from the neck down, except that is causing resistance as we're going through the pulse of ascension. That energy is resisting, so it's causing us pain. It's like it's stabbing us. So totally get that. And yep, a number of people are having headaches. And yes, Cindy Lynn also shared, she said, so I need to get them all and soak myself in them. Um, yeah. I have a few that I put on, believe it or not, down my spine every day, because that, that's just where we're at. And our body, the energetics of the oils understand what's going on vibrationally. So they help us adjust, which is great. So what I'd like to do, I know we're running out of time. I hope people, are cool with possibly going over a smidge. But I'd love to do a quick healing to reconnect you with your inner child, just so you can have a little bit of communication and maybe have even just a minute or two to have empathy for the child part of you that needs some TLC right now and who really has been in charge of way too much. And, those of you who have warrior, the child is in charge of the warrior too, which is a little frightening to have a child leading the pack with a warrior, right? So, all right. So let's just take a couple of deep breaths because we've been chatting away and sending out a lot of energy to those children. And I invite you to set some sacred space for yourself. I did that for the entire group before the broadcast started, but welcoming you to invite in your spiritual team closer to you to surround and protect you, creating a sacred space for your child to feel safe, secured, loved, and witnessed. And sending energy through us, through our child, and even our critic, grounding us into the present moment, connecting us deep within the earth plane, expanding our divine connection so we can feel the love and the light around us and coming to us. And just take a moment to look within and notice where the energy of your inner child is located right now. And no judgment, just noticing. Just imagine gently inviting your inner child to move into the heart for a moment. Allowing them to experience the swirl of green and pink energy around them, and the white and the gold.